Good day, YouTube. I'm Daniel Claremont. I'm the Acadian therapist. Welcome back to lovely rural Nova Scotia. If you've been here at the channel before, you know that the general theme is improving the quality of your life, quality of relationships, helping you achieve more success in your career, your overall life. In fact, the whole theme this season, which is captured in this playlist, The Roadmap for Change, has been about applying a lot of these different philosophies and strategies to help you achieve some really ambitious goals in your life. We've talked about self-awareness, about where you're at, and recognizing that you might be a little bit off course, that you're not quite living the life you want to lead, and ways of checking in with yourself. We've talked about developing systems and strategies to help break those goals down into manageable chunks and move forward towards them. We've talked about some of the influences on those values and goals, where maybe they come from, and a way to kind of audit that for yourself. Well, is that the motive you want? And we have taken a break on occasion where, sometimes it's important to shut your brain off and relax and take your mind off of things, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. And so we arrive here. This is episode 8 this season. It's the halfway mark through the season. And having talked about all of those things, I want to talk about what happens when, despite knowing the system works, despite believing in your goals, believing in your values, really intense feelings come up, intense obstacles, almost like a tantrum, maybe a lot of anger or anxiety, or just a crushing discouragement or a depression, self-doubt, noticing more arguments with people you care about. Shocking tsunamis of emotion that flare up. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, YouTube. I've been wanting to talk about this for about a year, and I collect some ideas and they sit on a shelf and I put it off and I put it off. And I had to be honest with myself. Why do you keep putting this off? And it's because I still struggle with it. And of course I do, because I'm just as human as anybody else, and change is hard. And so this is going to be a mutual journey this week. I'm ripping the Band-Aid off. We're going to talk about navigating the intense emotions that come up in the process of change and how to get through that to help you stay on course for the life you want to have. I hope you'll stick with me. As always, if you see value in this content, like, share, comment, subscribe. Let's get to it. So first off, I want to talk about maybe why these feelings come up, because they can be so baffling, can't they? We're so good at lecturing ourselves, I certainly am, telling ourselves, you know better, you know that you should. Why aren't you doing it? Why are you doing the opposite to what you should do? Or why are you picking fights with people? Why are you just sitting playing a video game for an hour instead of doing that tiny little thing that would move you towards your goal? So to help frame this, I wanted to talk about the hero's journey. Classic kind of concept. Now, I am not a literature expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've consumed my fair share of media over the years. And whether it's the story of Luke Skywalker, or Captain Kirk, or Frodo and the Ring, whether it's Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad, whether it's probably one of the Real Housewives, not really my strong suit. You see these characters that encounter adversity. So there's the get to know you phase at the beginning of the story. You kind of know the character, life is going reasonably well, and then a challenge comes up. Something that they need to accomplish, something very important. And before the end of the story, they're going to become someone completely different. And so there's a journey, there's a challenge or a series of challenges that the character needs to go through. They need to make new friends. They may have to say goodbye to old friends. Maybe everything about their life will completely change. And sometimes they lose their life. They sacrifice themselves for this mission, for this cause. But what makes it heroic is the hero will go through with this. But there is almost always a moment of doubt, or several moments of doubt. Their hero has a way out. Superman loses his powers and has the ability to live a normal life. There is this moment when the burden can be taken away from them. In a moment of extreme challenge, extreme trial, the hero has to make a choice. Do you keep going or not? And perhaps that's where we are. When you're working on a goal, you're working on something completely different. If you achieve that, if you're at peace with no longer being a smoker, no longer eating the wrong things, no longer cheating on your partner, accepting a horrible diagnosis, saying goodbye to a loved one. When the day comes that you've achieved that, your life has changed. The people in your life are different. And your mind knows that. So what if the moment of crisis, the moment of self-doubt, the moment of intense anger or sadness or discouragement or procrastination, which are all normal defenses, we've talked about it almost every video. These are natural defenses your brain has. It's a reaction to you being the most different from who you're used to being than you've ever been. And that might be a little bit scary to part of you. Maybe it's scary to people who care about you. They have doubts that they express. There might be intense loneliness because there's nobody else that knows exactly what you're going through. And so you need to reconcile that. And that shows up as intense emotions. And just like Superman, you could give up. You could turn back. And so what keeps you going in those moments? Let's talk some interventions. When it comes to really intense emotions, I almost always like to talk about Marsha Linehan's work in dialectical behavior therapy. It's called radical acceptance, which basically means accepting things as they are, not as you wish them to be or as you fear them to be. Now, one thing about those intense emotions, a lot of things seem very true to you. We like to feel right. I love feeling right. I like to feel smart. I like to feel like I figured things out, and most of us do. And so when you're flooded with an emotion that says, stop doing this thing, well, it's really convincing. It's convincing to break up with that partner or to tell off that boss. That feels really convincing. It feels very important. And so if you apply the skills of DBT, it will help you to ground. Now, I've talked about this before in some depth, so I will refer you to those other videos, but the simplest intervention I've got is 3 breaths. I'm going to suggest you do it right now with me. In through the nose, out through the mouth, breathing out longer than you breathe in. Whatever you're doing, if you're puttering around, whatever, it'll take us less than 30 seconds, I promise. Here we go. Number 1. Very good. Maybe roll your shoulders, stretch a little bit. Now, right now, I feel a bit calmer than I was before I did it. I'm not kidding. I notice my body feels a little bit more relaxed, less tension in my shoulders. Maybe you've noticed the same. Now, if you're feeling a moment of crisis, if you're feeling really stressed, chances are you do have those 30 seconds to take those breaths. But it helps you look at the situation a little bit more calmly. And now you got to ask yourself, whatever you feel like doing, is it really urgent that you do it in this moment? Can you sleep on it? Can you wait 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour? If it's something you actually need to do, if it's important, if it's right, it'll still be true after you calm yourself. Most things are not as urgent in life and death as our brains make us seem that they are. So if you take this time to reflect, to center yourself, you're going to be able to approach it differently. Some of the other grounding things that you can do: taking a glass of water, walking for a little bit, taking the dog for a walk, petting the dog or the cat. Doing these little self-care things, taking a shower, splashing water in your face. Again, I did talk about this in earlier videos. You can also check out the show notes below. I'll link to all of those, including a really long extended grounding video. It's a guided grounding activity where I will walk you through some intense waves of emotion. The Rest, Relaxation, Helpful Distractions playlist is also good for helping to relax, to change your mindset a little bit. It's going to help you ground and help you calm yourself. And to help you reflect and to choose more intentionally what path you want to take. We often use the narrative of willpower and grit and stick-to-itness. Now, I'm a fan of those approaches, but remember, making vast life changes is a marathon. It's not a race. When you take your time, it allows your brain to catch up and get used to the idea of being someone new. It also helps you see the possibilities instead of just the sacrifice of what you lose when you let go of that person or that life. It allows you to be open to the wonder of what's possible. So I'd like to wrap up with a metaphor. Imagine this season, this playlist, we have been climbing a mountain. So at first there was some reflection. We were at the bottom of the mountain. At first it was overwhelming to look at the mountain. It's like, your brain just looks at the whole thing. It's like, I can't climb a mountain, because you're looking at the whole thing in one shot. You're getting overwhelmed. So then we planned, well, what do you need to climb a mountain? What skills do you need? And we get started in tiny steps, one step at a time. And as we've climbed, as you have climbed, there have been steep sections, there have been beautiful moments, but there's been a lot of hardships. And in the moments of intense overwhelm, what if we view that as a moment that you've reached a plateau? So, okay, you've been climbing for a little bit, you're scratched up, you're dinged up, and you find a place where you can rest, put down your pack. Look around you. Look at how far you've come. Think about how far there is ahead. Notice the emotions. Take some breaths. Ground yourself. This is a moment of serenity and reflection and collecting your thoughts, collecting your resources to decide if you keep climbing or not. It's not necessarily about always climbing. Sometimes we have to rest and reflect, take stock of what you've accomplished. Breathe. Slow time down a little bit. Focus just on the thing you have to do in this moment instead of all the things. You may find those intense waves of emotion pass a little bit more easily. And then you have the lived experience that you can conquer this, that you are bigger than your emotions. The emotions come and go, but you are always there. You always have the ability to make another choice. And maybe the next choice you make is still in line with those goals and those values. Maybe you slow it down, maybe you change the scale or scope, you adjust, and you keep climbing that mountain. We'll see you at the next step of the climb. We'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.